Hello again. This is Leilani Cawthon, CEO of Learning Council News Media and Research. I was just visiting California on the Learning Logistics and Tech Tour. So, on my journey back to California, a state I lived in for some 25 years, I was a bit nostalgic. I noticed the same juxtaposition on the flight out as I see in schools. One gentleman reading a real newspaper on the plane, while behind him, a person spent the entire flight on their smartphone. Paper and tech in various mixes are still the reality of schools. The weather, as always, was awesome. Yet on each of the drives to and from the airport, hotel, and event, I was struck with the thought that it was just a wee bit less intense than some 15 or more years ago when I visited the area regularly, calling on tons of high tech companies. It felt slower, less rushed, even less traffic. I asked myself, is this difference in feeling the result of the pandemic? The mass exodus from California, as I myself had done when I moved my family to Arkansas, which was really to make visiting all of America each year easier, being in the middle of the country, it's easier to fly to any one place. So, is it really maybe the mass wave of boomer retirements that's making it feel this way? I was recollecting those many years of working alongside boomers and the awesome and awful competitiveness, ingenuity, rapidly rising tech companies full of urgency and a certain intensity and ruthlessness you had to be part of to understand. Happy times, mostly unique to the Bay Area of California. Superintendent Cheryl Jordan of Milpitas Unified School District was our host, and when I arrived to open the event, they were ready. Reps from our sponsors were also delightfully early, getting ready for our first table discussions. I kicked off the meeting having everyone introduce themselves, the Learning Logistics and Tech Tour be more meeting than conference. I was happy to see various ranking administrators from both traditional public and charter schools. Later, some of the Milpitas board members joined us for some of the table discussion workshops, Cheryl's briefing, and then the Learning Council market briefing. Here's what happened. The morning research-based discussions on updating personalization tactics, the nines of AI and human intelligence, the characteristics to know about alpha generation, and the information on old versus new workflows to pay attention to were, one and all, rousing conversations. It got loud. I took a few photos. I was glad to learn that both Lammersville and Milpitas USD are not seeing the rapid attrition happening in so many other parts of the country. They're still building on old buildings, expanding or planning new schools. They're also shifting tactics, especially towards personalization and flexibility. You'll see the recorded talks on our site soon. Byron Unified Superintendent were our panelists at the end, and they shared how a small district is burrowing further into community creation tactics, providing a virtual school and doing things nimbly that are truly ways even large districts can make themselves feel more amenable to the shifts in culture and other trends that are debilitating many of the traditional public schools. I loved Superintendent Crystal Castaneda and Coordinator of Educational Services Debbie Neighbors at Byron's wholesome and infectious affection for their district and its students. So Learning Council's market briefing with projections from our mathematical modeling converging all the trends to make bold statements about where the K-12 education nation is going raised some eyebrows for sure, particularly from one of the Milpitas's board trustees. He said, "We're going to beat these predictions here," and he could be right. That particular area of wealth and influence will probably see less of the attrition away from traditional schools in other areas of the country, and even other areas of California are having. And then in the lunch presentation about spatial temporal AI, the new auto-cohorting AI calendaring developed in Nostary as a result of our Flex Learning Logistics project founded during the pandemic had many interesting comments as well. So Lammersville USD is already doing a great deal of flex with modular hours in their schedule, with some pace-based learning, although I will need to ask more questions of how associated the pace is with traditional whole groups. An IT leader from Milpitas USD commented that they already do some cohorting, basically, in projects that has every student learning at their own pace. But I didn't understand how this was done manually within a whole group pace-based master schedule. I remember I asked if a student still hadn't been taught addition, and then the group project was on adding fractions, how would that one student, perhaps years behind, contribute in the cohort? I'm still confused, and I did not have time to clarify how it is really done to have pace-based learning within the brackets of by age and whole group pacing. It's this curious anomaly that keeps coming up as Learning Council delves deeper into spatial temporal AI. Maybe group work on pace with curriculum maps is just some of the concepts, and then maybe the refined ones, the individual ones you have to grasp, like get scaffolded, could remain pace-based in a subject, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't understand how you scaffold learning but continue to say you're pace-based, but you're still whole group. I don't get it. And I'm working on it, but I still don't get it. How would that work in math or say science or social studies? So I spent the hours after that meeting pondering how pace-based learning of those scaffolded concepts, which is really, it's kind of hardcore in some subjects because you really do need to learn certain things before you take on higher level things. And in a whole group of learning at the same time. So I think the friction is in the definitions. And as a trend minder, I realized on the flight home that I'm looking at personalized learning as its ultimate definition of entirely individually paced and customized, and that the thinking of schools is not that present consumer view of what it means to be customized, really entirely. Schools contextualize what that mean, and they bracket it by age. So now I am worried on a whole new level because I'm watching the skyrocketing trend of online learning globally and the rise of alternatives in schooling. And like I said in the briefing, the learning markets are seeking their new identity post-pandemic. It may be radical what it all lands on, but we are in the same years of change as a society for schooling as we were when the manufacturing pattern first took root, as people by the millions left farms to work in factories. But now we're in a reverse migration pattern to rural and suburban areas. So in any case, there were brilliant comments made, and I went away with a lot of renewed affection for those districts and their missions in California. And I'm off to Baltimore next.